Welcome to another video. I want to read a story to you guys this morning. It's very early. I got up at 4:30 this morning, had a lot on my mind, a lot on my heart. So I do what I do when that happens, and I was very encouraged this morning. So I feel like I really need to do is just share my excitement and my enthusiasm and the peace that God has given me. Because I don't care how long you follow the Lord, I don't care how long you study your Bible, you always need encouragement, don't you? I know I do. Don't confuse confidence with courage. Courage is what you do under stress. Courage is what you do without thinking about. Courage is what you do because you have a principle of conviction, not preference, but conviction. Courage is caring about others before yourself, right? It's running in the direction of danger, not away from it. And we are certainly living in a period in time in history right now where we need courage, don't we? I know I do. So that's my prayer for 2021. Lord, fill me with courage, not just the confidence, not just your peace, not just the assurance that everything's going to be okay. I don't need to know everything's going to be okay. That's where I'm at in my walk after 36 years of following the Lord Jesus Christ. I don't need to know everything's going to be okay. What I need is I need to be prepared. So I'm praying in 2022 that God brings me courage. And I'm a little intrepidated by that prayer because I know that He's going to test my skill set, right? So He tested my skill set this morning with a prepper's story. So I want to read this story to you. I hope it brings encouragement. So listen to what the Bible has to say. In 2 Kings chapter 4, beginning in verse 1, the Bible says, "A certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, 'Your servant my husband is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord. And the creditor is coming to take my 2 sons to be his slaves.' So Elisha said to her, 'What shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in your house?' And she said, 'Your maidservant has nothing in the house but a jar of oil.' And then he said, 'Go, borrow vessels from everywhere, from all of your neighbors, empty vessels, do not gather just a few. And when you have come in, you shall shut the door behind you and your sons, then pour it into all of those vessels and set aside the full ones.' So she went from him and shut the door behind her and her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured it out. Now it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said to her sons, 'Bring me another vessel.' And he said to her, 'There is not another vessel.' So the oil ceased. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, 'Go, sell the oil and pay your debt, and you and your sons shall live on the rest.'" A prepper's story. I don't know if you've ever heard that story before, but we're going to have a little fireside chat. It's 27 degrees out. We're going to have our coffee this morning. I don't know how long this video is going to be, by the way, just so you know. So if you don't have the time right now to sit down and relax and just take a deep breath, and before we wind the clock, before we check our phones, before we check our emails, before we turn on the media, let's just sit down and relax a minute. Let's just take 5 or 10. I want to talk about, in 2022, being prepared. That's where I'm at. This is where God is showing me that I need to be. I need to be prepared. So as He begins to show me the direction that my life needs to take, this website, this channel, this ministry, that's what this is. This is a ministry. my own walk with Him is it's a day by day, sometimes a minute by minute relationship. You may sit back and watch some of these videos and think, oh man, I wish I was a neighbor of Survivalist and Mountain Dew. Man, wouldn't it be great to have, their self-reliance and their sustaining knowledge, and wouldn't it be just so cool for him to be in my inner circle? I don't want to portray to you anything that I'm not. I walk in faith. I live day by day, and I try to encompass my walk around the fact that everything needs to be tempered in humility. And while I do pride myself on not failing, I mean, that's the motivation here, guys. It's not overconfidence. It's not arrogance. It's humility. It's being a good student. I am a disciple. I am a person who wants to sit at the feet of a master and learn. And so the knowledge base that I have and the experiences that I've gained in my life come out of that attitude that I have not arrived. I'm not there yet. Don't know when I might even get there, but I'm walking in that direction. So I hope this video today brings you sort of a litmus test. This is a blood pressure reading, okay? This is a thermometer. We have instruments in life, don't we, that gauge our wellness. How are you feeling? What's the temperature? Everything in life gives us an indication if we're going in the right direction, or do we need to be better prepared? If you think about it, everything in life, from the notifications that you get, I love my bank. I absolutely love my bank, even though I have turned off all notifications and I've called them and told them to please quit texting me at 4:30 in the morning, they still do it. So yeah, I bought something online the other day, and of course my bank woke me up at 4:30 in the morning to make sure that I was prepared, in that understanding that yes, I did authorize that purchase. So we get reminders, we get notifications, we have indications, and we are put in daily constraints every single minute of our life that we should be measuring our journey and our preparedness. We just don't realize it, do we? But the reality is that if you're living in a technological age today, you are a prepper. You're being prepared every minute of the day. So the subject of today's video is going to be, what level were you at in that area of preparedness? So I'm going to go into great detail this morning as we have our coffee and as we talk about survival and the widow's oil. Can you imagine putting yourself in her situation? Her husband's just died. She has nothing. And you need to understand that back in those days, the woman was not the provider. The man was. So can you imagine waking up and realizing that, wow, I'm not going to be able to take care of myself. But if you notice and you read that passage of Scripture, she was not worried about herself. She was worried about her children. And not only did she have the right heart, but she had the right mind. You see, she knew who to go to. And her confidence was in the fact that she was living in a relationship for the majority of her life. We don't have much to go on, but we can be mindful of the fact that, her husband was a man of God. And so she witnessed that. She was a part of that umbrella of protection. And that's where my confidence is. That's where my peace is. My peace is that I have a codependency upon God. Not a government, not a utility company, and not a financial institution. And I hope that's where you're going to become more prepared in your relationship in 2022. I hope that this video and this message that I bring to you today challenges you to develop your level of preparedness, because we're going to break down the 4 tiers of preparedness. Okay? So as we think about that prepper's story, and I would say that, she was probably tier 1. She had a little bit of oil. And back then, oil was used for many things. And she had just enough, just a little bit. A day, a week, we don't know. We don't know what her consumption base was, but she was providing for herself and her 2 sons. So I would put her at tier 1. So right away, before we get into this self-examination of these 4 tiers of preparedness, I want to encourage you right now, to the best of my ability, that no matter what level that you're in, no matter what tier you're in, whether it's tier 1 through 4, I want you to understand something, that God is your refuge. Okay? God is your refuge. And I don't care where you're at. I don't care how prepared you are or how unprepared you are. God is your rock and He is your salvation. So let's describe, first of all, what is this tier 4 terminology. Maybe you've heard this term before. Maybe you've heard this terminology, right? So let me give you basically my definition, and I'm not the expert on, this subject matter, but I have an opinion. So this is really what this video is going to be. This video is going to be based upon my analysis, my understanding of the subject matter, in my opinion. Okay? It's not the end-all, do-all, and I am not the... I haven't reached the pinnacle of preparedness and survival knowledge. So please climb higher. But in my understanding, when I think about the 4 tiers of preparedness, I'm talking about a situation that you're going to have to put yourself into, because there is no 911 or grocery store. Okay? So let's go ahead and paint that scenario for you. There's no 911, there's no grocery store, there's no Uber or Grubhub or Holiday Inn. How many of us travel across country or for more than one day and we don't make reservations in advance to perhaps that layover, right? I recently moved my father up from Central Florida, and as we were packing up the U-Haul and caravanning up from Central Florida coming to North Carolina, we had to stop halfway. And we didn't make reservations. We didn't know where we were going to stop. So we got about halfway, and I happened to see an exit, and guess what? There was a Holiday Inn. Hey, let's stop here. So we walked into the main door there and walked up to the counter, and the nice young lady asked us, "Hey, can I help you?" "Yes, we would like some rooms for the night." How many of us do that? Quite a few, right? Very few of us prepare beyond our day, do we? We needed shelter for the night. And thank goodness that there was a Holiday Inn. I think it was a Holiday Inn. It might have been a Hampton. I don't remember, but you get the point. So let's break down these 4 tiers of preparedness. So if you're in tier 1, if you're a prepper, and I'm talking to you preppers, because the reality is that everybody's a prepper. It's just, it depends on your level of preparedness. Okay? Everyone is a prepper. If you're an adult, you're a prepper. And to some extent, even if you're, a teenager. I know a lot of kids. I follow a lot of kids on social media that are very, very knowledgeable in their self-sustainment. So if you're of the age of reason and intelligence, you should be preparing. So tier 1. Tier 1 is a level where you're going to be prepared for approximately any situation that's going to put you in that no 911 or no grocery store, no Uber or no Holiday Inn for 1 to 2 weeks. Okay? and perhaps your shelter is temporary. Like you have to go put yourself into a campground or a hotel, motel, VBRO, or the other one. So I want you to think of camping. And I would say this is probably where 100% of everyone that you see that enjoys camping or backpacking lies. So I want you to think Camping World or KOA. And it's amazing since 2020 how many people have gone out and purchased a travel trailer or an RV of some sort. And they're tier 1. If you have temporary shelter and you find yourself enjoying RVing or recreational camping, car camping as I've often called it, backpacking, if you're one of those persons, then you are 100% in this category because you have the ability to take care of yourself for a very short period of time, 1 to 2 weeks. But you are also connected to a support group. You have a contingency, and that contingency goes beyond your knowledge of just where do I go to get ice and water and where's the shower. But this is the most basic level and probably the easiest level to achieve. So my question to you, if you fall into tier 1, is do you have an emergency plan? Do you have a small cache right now? Perhaps maybe somewhere in your trunk or in your garage, or maybe it's in your bedroom closet. But if you were to lose power or you were incapable of leaving your home, or how's this for recent context? Let's just run a hypothetical scenario right now. Let's just suppose hypothetically that there's a snowstorm and you're traveling through Virginia and you're on I-95. Let's just run that as just a WAG, right? This is a WAG, okay? Do you have a plan? Or would you be stranded on I-95, supposedly? Let's just pretend for a minute, right? You do not have the ability to call 911, and you have no shelter. In fact, I want to challenge you that the 100% of the people that I'm dealing with right now, you have no excuse to be prepared. You need to be prepared, okay? It doesn't cost that much to put a bug-out bag or get home bag or a few days or just a few weeks of supplies together. We're talking literally less than $100, guys, okay? Less than $100. You spend that on social media. You spend that on entertainment, frivolous entertainment that is absolutely benefiting you very little. So there is no excuse. So I don't want to combat this mentality with sort of a braggadocious or a demonstrative attitude right now. But I want to tell you right now that if you're not at least tier 1, then there's no excuse. Okay, there's no excuse. I don't want to hear I don't have any money. I don't want to hear I don't have a job. You can put together a kit in your car right now or your home, and I don't care if you're sleeping on your neighbor's couch or you're living in your mom's basement. You have the ability to do tier 1. All right? These are going to help you with the most likely events. The most likely events. This is something that I hate to tell you this, but everyone is going to experience a tier 1 emergency. Everyone in your life. I don't care if you're on your way to grandma's house during Thanksgiving weekend, you're going to get a flat tire. You're going to need to reach out to someone for assistance. So this is tier 1. So if you have car insurance and a spare tire, you are prepper. I know that may come as a mind-blowing thought right now, but I'm trying to expand the parameters of our ignorance by sharing with you that everyone in society living in this country, and even in many places abroad, are tier 1 preppers. Okay? So, I want you to understand that the here and now is something that you should be thinking about. Let's talk about tier 2 for just a moment. as you process Tier 1. Tier 2 is going to develop in your understanding and in your practice after your first national emergency. Okay? After your first FEMA event, you're going to become a Tier 2. So we're talking about going beyond an NSF situation in your bank account, or you having a flat tire, or maybe your battery doesn't work. Okay? You are now in a FEMA event, a national disaster. You're in a crisis. You've experienced your first hurricane, tornado, flood, fire, whatever. Okay? You know where I'm going. So you have no electricity, and here in this situation, not only are you concerned about food and shelter and clean water and sanitation and all the things that go hand in hand with sustaining your life from a day-to-day basis, but now you're in a situation where you're going to be required to sustain beyond 1 or 2 weeks. We could be talking about a month, up to a month. Okay, so this not only extenuates your circumstances beyond having enough food and water and having a secure shelter for 1 or 2 weeks. Maybe you're at home when this happens, but to me, the awareness that you need to focus on in a Tier 2 situation is that now your security is at risk. Okay? I dare say that if you're camping or backpacking or you're hiking or you're hanging out at the KOA or the Sam's Club or the Good Sam's Club, whatever they call that campground, I dare say that you're ever going to be in a situation where you're thinking about your personal safety, that your life is going to be threatened. Now, nobody goes around and leaves their doors unlocked, at least not in 2020, and probably not even in 1970 did you do that. We all have a sense of personal security. But in a Tier 2 situation, you're going to begin thinking about self-defense a little bit more than you did in Tier 1. Tier 1 self-defense is your cell phone. Oh, let me call mom, or let me call the tow truck, or let me call Grubhub. You know, that's your level of security. That's your comfort. Okay, you're not worried about your personal protection because you have a civil society and you have community services. But in a Tier 2 situation, you don't. You have lost civil services. Okay, that's where you're at. Now, maybe there's still law and order, but it's very risky. It's very limited. Think Hurricane Katrina, right? How many people were left in not only in a dangerous situation because they were without electricity and food and clean water, but they were also suspect to being taken advantage of and perhaps even robbed or, hurt. I'll let you run the gamut on your imagination there. But no electricity, supply chains are completely disrupted in a region. We're not talking about you just being stranded on 995 in a snowstorm, or you being broke down with a spare tire and you've realized it's flat and it's 15 miles to the local service station. We're talking about a region. A Tier 2 situation may affect not only your community, but it may also affect your state. Okay? In fact, in the 4 regions that make up this country, go to the FEMA map and look at the regions that FEMA has broken down the country into. I live in Region 4, okay? A lot of my videos, I have an intro, and that intro talks about broadcasting from FEMA Region 4, and you may have wondered, what does that mean? So you can go to the FEMA map and you can look at your region. So this is a Tier 2 situation, okay? So security, so you're going to have an extra layer of consumption-based supplies, but self-defense is going to absolutely be a huge priority for you. So for those of you that have not stepped up your game, from a tier 2 situation where you have the ability to defend your life or your loved ones. And I'm not talking about you need to go out and have an AK-47, but if you don't have the ability to defend your life in the event that you cannot call the police or the sheriff, then you're in tier 1. And I really believe the jump or the lapse between tier 1 and tier 2 is self-defense. That's the lapse. It's not just do I have a knowledge or do I have the ability to stay warm and dry and my belly full. The lapse there and the void that you need to fill is your ability to be able to defend your life, because you are now living in a society which I would classify as an SHTF event. Okay? So you need to process that. Begin thinking about, in 2022, if you're only a tier 1 and you want to take it to the next level, begin thinking about that self-defense aspect. All right? So, and there are a lot of things that can bring about a tier 2 situation, not necessarily just a natural disaster, but a financial setback, maybe a health situation. Okay? You may have a crisis that's happening internally in your own life. Maybe you can't keep it together here, and you've just shut down. And you're having a hard time just getting up in the morning and putting on your clothes and functioning in life. And you're struggling. And so I want to remind you of the widow's situation there in 2 Kings. This is the reason why I started this message out with, you need to have a dependency upon God. Okay? And so my prayer this year in 2022 is that no matter what situation you find yourself in, no matter how destitute or desperate you might be, I want you to begin understanding that. Please take encouragement in that. Yeah, life is mental, isn't it? It really is. It's not physical. Life isn't physical. The physical aspect is it's almost involuntary reaction, isn't it? It's almost like breathing or blinking. It's a motor skill. Living in the physical is a motor skill, but living in reality it's a mental game. This is where you separate the winners and the losers from. And I would say that probably less than 50% of the prepping community today falls in a tier 2 situation. Less than 50%. So while we have 100% of society that may be able to handle a tier 1, I'd say less than 50% of our society is capable of surviving a month or more in an SHTF situation. Okay? Now, let's talk about tier 3, because I believe this is probably where the majority of preppers are. Tier 3. If you've even stumbled upon this website, if you've even made it to this point in this video, there's a good chance that you are probably in tier 3. And some of you are beyond that. And to that I say, amen and kudos. But let's define tier 3 for just a moment. So you're going to begin preparing for a societal collapse. This is a period of a very long period of time, a year. Not just a month or 2 months, but we're talking about a year. You are prepping beyond just having a normal food pantry. You're now storing beans and rice in 5-gallon buckets. My sister-in-law came by yesterday to visit us, and she's a prepper. And we weren't able to connect during the Christmas holiday, so she brought presents to us. So we exchanged presents this yesterday, and she was bringing us canned Ghee butter, and we're giving her X2 survival shield, and we're exchanging blankets and socks, and we're talking about prepping, and she's encouraging me, I'm encouraging her, And it's just funny. It's just she's talking about her organizational systems, and we just had a really great visit, and it was an encouragement to me and my heart and my family to recognize that the people that we love and care about are processing this information in 2020 and 2021 and now in 2022. And she became a prepper in 2020. She sure did. And she's tier 3. And it's amazing to me that in such a short period of time, in just less than 2 years, how well of a tier 3 she is. How well. I mean, she's up there. So I'm encouraged. But we're going to talk about tier 3 from a standpoint that society has fallen. And so that's what we were discussing yesterday when I was talking to her, because we were identifying some of the areas in 2022 that we need to focus on, and I was encouraging her with a couple of things, and I won't go into any great detail with her situation, but I will say that there is a difference between tier 3 and tier 4, and we'll really nail that down, and we're going to take a deep dive into the difference between tier 3 and tier 4. But this is probably where most preppers land. And unfortunately, for certain limitations that we may have, this is where many of you will stay for the duration of your life. You may never advance to tier 4. And we're going to make some of those distinctions, and we're going to qualify some of those factors, and we're going to define those variables in great detail this morning. But I don't want you to be discouraged that if you're only in tier 3 and you never make it to tier 4, that for some reason you're going to fail. That's not true. Okay, I just read 2 Kings chapter 4 to you, all right? Please keep that as the context of this conversation. But in a tier 3 situation, society has fallen, and now we need to think about relocation and rebuilding. And like I said, this is where most preppers fall into this category. And I would say, just as my own assumption, or presupposition, or the universe that I live in, I would say that probably this is where 90% of society will fail after 90 days. Okay? We will see a great culling after 90 days, after there's no 911, no Uber, no Grubhub, and no Holiday Inn. So, hopefully that knocks you out of neutral this morning. But we're talking about a time period where you now need to begin thinking about not just a consumer-based lifestyle, but you've got to start really making this a part-time hobby. This needs to be the focus of your life. It really does. So this isn't something about where you just go out and you buy this little bag or this little kit and you keep it in the back corner of the house, and it's sort of the in case of emergency. We're not talking about candles, flashlights, and fire extinguishers here. We're talking about a process, a way of life. This consumes your existence. This becomes part of who you are as an individual, as a tier 3 individual. If you're a tier 3 prepper, you're in a prepper's group. Okay, you talk to preppers, you read prepping books, you practice prepping, you spend ample amount of time every month prepping. Every time you go to the grocery store, you're prepping. Every time you go to a Goodwill or Salvation Army, you're prepping. Okay? You buy things and you spend your money on things that most people don't. You don't spend your money on luxury items. You spend your money on generators or lithium batteries, right? Last year I spent almost $2,000. 2K, guys. 2K. Took them 9 months for them to send them to me. Literally, it took 9 months for me to get a 36 volt, 50 milliamp hour battery system. Okay, not a 12 volt system, a 36 volt system, 50 milliamp hour system. I spent almost $2,000 on that system. And it took them 9 months because all of the lithium batteries come from China. So I That's where I was last year. So I wasn't buying expensive watches. I was buying expensive batteries. So yeah, that's where a lot of people hang out. And this is where we have this mindset and we have this mode of survival that we're always thinking about, not just our weekly grocery store visit or whatever it is that we're looking at from season to season, but we're now extrapolating our time and our money and our efforts and our focus is on survival. Okay? We're focused on survival, not just staying alive until, law and order or the power comes back on, but we are really processing, okay, in long term. And if you even know what retort canning is, then you're tier 3, okay? So go Google retort canning, all right? You're tier 3 if you're retort canning. Or if you know what a Mylar bag is and an oxygen absorber is, you're tier 3, okay? So this SHTF situation has you processing not just consumption-based items, but you are now thinking about not just toilet paper, but you're stocking up on medical supplies, okay? Medical. You've got bleach, you've got hydrogen peroxide, you've got isopropyl alcohol, you've got iodine, you've got salt, you've got surgical kits. You pay attention to what's available and what's not, and you buy it in times of convenience and comfort and abundance, not during times of crisis. One of the buzzwords since 2020 has been crisis or panic buyer. Oh, there's panic buying going on. I don't know what a panic buyer is. What is panic buying? That term hit us in the last couple of years, and I guess maybe the great toilet paper pandemic or the crisis of 2020 when everyone was running out looking for poo-poo paper. And then we're panic buying. I'm sorry. If you need to stay clean after doing your business, I wouldn't say that's a panic purchase. That's a basis of society. I mean, when you think about the oil reserves and the food reserves that our federal government has, I mean, they're hoarders. Our federal government is hoarding. Okay? So please don't let the media brainwash you into making you feel guilty that if you have more than 30 days worth of supplies that you're a hoarder. I'm sorry, I take great offense in that term. No such thing as a hoarder. Okay? Jesus says he who builds his house on the rock is wise. Don't get me preaching. All right. So, Tier 3 handles not just having enough food and water, but an increased knowledge base and a support group to not just stay alive. But you've heard me say it time and time again throughout every video, be safe. Okay, you can now encompass that philosophy that I support, and that is you can be safe, no matter the duration. Self-defense, navigation, security, and communication go beyond gasoline and propane. Your capabilities of recharging any electronic device and communicating beyond, hey honey, pass the salt. Think solar. Think hand pumps for your well. Maybe you've got a generator. Maybe you have a rainwater collection system. If you have 55-gallon blue drums that are connected to your downspouts, you are tier 3. If you have a seed vault, you are tier 3. If you have anything that can regenerate electricity, well, I don't care if it's a little wind-up crank-type generator that can charge a flashlight. If you have analog capabilities, if you know how to read a map, if you can make fire without a big lighter, if you have satellite capability, okay, then you're tier 3. If you have survival caches, if you have a system to be able to go out and to bury things in the ground that are not going to become ruined by water mold, mildew, or the bugs, then you're doing good. Okay. So that's what defines a tier 3 person. And in a tier 3 person, it may not necessarily be something that you just have in your home, but it's something that you're capable of taking with you no matter where you go. You have that knowledge base. Maybe you've never put yourself in that situation, but you do practice and you do train and you do have a knowledge base. Okay? So I'm not going to encourage you that you drive your your car off of Big Sur Cliff and you spend 7 days in a survival situation testing your tier 3 skill sets. That's not what I'm encouraging you to do. But you do have the will. You do have the knowledge. Okay? You're not simply hanging out at KOA complaining there's no hot water. That's tier 3. So, process that for a moment, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Let's take it to the last level. Tier 4. A tier 4 person is someone who I refer to as a survivalist. It's the simplest way to describe tier 4. You are beyond prepared. You are a survivalist. You have self-sustaining ability that goes beyond a consumption-based support network. You don't need electricity. Ever. You don't need refrigeration or freezer. I was telling Mountain Dew, I've said this many times to her, as we have gone through our analysis of our survival plan. I told her, I said, I'm not going to go out and spend all this money on generating electricity. I mean, do I have a generator? Yeah, I do. I've got 150 gallons of propane. Got enough of a generator and a hand pump to pump the water that we need, and that's it. But I'm not worried about the refrigerator, and I'm not worried about the freezer. Short term, yeah, absolutely. But in a long-term situation, I'm not going to go out and spend tens and thousands of dollars trying to maintain a refrigeration or a freezer-based system. It's not my gig. I could care less about electricity. In a tier 4 situation, you don't need it. You're perfectly fine with living like a little house on the prairie. Or maybe you're an Inuit Indian and you know how to go out and collect oil from blubber. Whether it be a seal or a whale, you can make your own oil. And you can light your own path. Okay? So, self-sustaining, off-grid, non-consumer based, but completely knowledge based. Now, I want to revisit this attitude that it's not about me, and I'm Superman. You have a codependency on God in all of these levels, but your knowledge base goes beyond having something that is giving you a support group, a connection. You can go out and do this all by yourself. And I'm going to ask you a few questions today to help you qualify whether or not you are in the tier 4. Probably if you have done these things and you have this capability, then there's a good chance you're in tier 4. But I would say probably less than 10%, somewhere in a range of maybe 5 to 10% of all preppers will land in a tier 4 situation. In a lot of these situations that they find themselves on being limited by only being able to stay in a tier 3 situation may not be because they don't have the knowledge. It may be because of their extenuating circumstances. Maybe that they have health conditions. So if you're on a life support system through medication, maybe you're a diabetic, or maybe you have high blood pressure. Okay, maybe you have asthma, and you need medication. You're not going to take it to tier 4. Okay, you're just not. I hate to sound that crass, but you're not going to take it to tier 4 if you have a medical condition where you are dependent upon medication. Another aspect to qualify you, because I know how men are. We're all performance driven. You have small children. If you have small children, there's a good chance that you will not take it to tier 4. Unless you have to, okay? Unless you absolutely have to. You're going to do whatever you got to do, and I would too. I'd die for my kids. I know you would too. But there's a good chance that you're not going to put your children in that situation on purpose. You're just not going to go purposely move off grid and put your children in an isolated situation. And I know there's a lot of families that do that, and I don't judge you or them. But if you live like an Amish person, or if you live like the North Alaskan bush people, and you're raising your children on a frozen tundra somewhere, and your dependency is on ice fishing, then okay. But you're already there, aren't you? It's already part of your culture. It's part of your ancestry. It's your way of life. You're a pilgrim. Okay? So, let me ask you this. Let me really boil this down. Let's trim the fat off. Let's just take this to the next lean level. So we got a piece of tenderloin right now, and we really want to prep this piece of meat as we use this pun. Let me ask you this question for those of you that feel like that you're in a tier 4 situation. Have you ever collected your own food for an extenuated time? Have you ever lived off the land? Have you ever hunted, foraged, or fished for your own food to sustain your nutritional value? I'm not talking about going on the TV show on the History Channel alone and starving yourself to death to see who quits. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, have you ever put yourself in a situation where you have collected or harvested or foraged for your own sustenance for an extenuated period of time? If you have not done that, if you have not tested that skill set, then you're tier 3. You're not tier 4. It's one thing to say, hunger would force me. Hunger, if you put me in a hunger situation, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to go get that game. No, you're not. No, you're not. Don't mean to burst your bubble, but I know many a hunter in my life who've spent thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours in the woods and have yet to ever take a deer. You don't just walk out into the woods and shoot Bambi. It's not that easy. So, tier 4, you've done it. You know the challenge. You know how hard it is. It's extremely hard to put yourself in survivor man situation. You are sustaining yourself because you do not have a consumption-based society in your ecosystem. Your little universe is dependent upon you. So here's another analogy or another illustration to help clarify tier 4. You wake up in the morning and your wife looks over at you and she says, "Well, honey, what's for breakfast?" And you open up your eyes and you rub your eyes and you look outside of your shelter or your tent or your lean-to, and you see a squirrel about 40 yards away. And you look over at her and you say, "We're having squirrel for breakfast this morning." Okay, that's tier 4. I talk about tier 4 survival a lot in my video series, SHTF has happened, what now, in the very first video. So I want to encourage you to go back and watch. If you haven't already, then please go watch this video. Lesson 1, SHTF has happened. Stuff has hit the fan. Now what? I go over in great detail the tools that you're going to need to put yourself in a tier 4 situation. I focus a lot of my attention on not just having a knowledge base and an experience level that goes beyond practice and training and developing your kit and your systems and your practices and gaining that skill set in lighting fire in the rain or purifying water out of the swamp. But yeah, we can all eat bugs for a week, can't we? Right? We sure can. We can all suck the moisture out of rocks if we have to, because we're waiting on someone to fly over and save our life because we've got a broken leg. Okay, that's not tier 4. That's an emergency. Tier 4 is it's you and you are alone for the rest of your life. So you have these tools, not just the knowledge, but you have the ability to maintain a self-defense structure in your own world. You have the ability to repair and maintain your equipment. You have the ability to craft. You have the ability to construct. That is lifting, moving, fastening, and cutting. You have these tools. You know how to cook. You know how to collect, as well as harvesting your own food, whether it's gardening, foraging, or hunting, fishing, trapping. You have this ability. So, tier 4 is not something that you think about doing later. Okay, it's not a contingency. Tier 4 is something that you're doing now. Tier 4 is you have a remote location already. Tier 4 is you go out there and you live it. You experience it. And maybe some of you are already in that agrarian culture. And you're just waiting for the power to go off. Okay? That's where you're at. Tier 4 is a challenge. And so I end this video this morning with that very humble confession to you that Survivalist is telling you that I'm not tier 4. I'm not. What? What do you mean you're not tier 4? I'm talking on a computer. I'm making a video. I have heat. I have electricity. I am not living off grid. I don't live in the woods. I am not Mick Dodge. I am Survivalist. And I want to thank you for watching this message. And I'm wishing all of you in 2022 that you have the attitude, the encouragement, and the confidence to continue to build these layers of self-sustaining reliance, protection, and confidence in the Lord Jesus Christ. So until next time, be safe.